Alrighty, happy Friday everyone. Hopefully you can hear me. I'm checking whether or not my audio is going through. It is going through. Welcome everyone to the Friday edition. I don't want to start calling it Friday edition because Tuesday edition, who knows. Good morning. It's Friday morning on my side of the world. And welcome to the Practical SQL Server HADR show, where I talk about topics that cover SQL Server high availability and disaster recovery, but from a practical point of view. High availability solutions are already very expensive. Licensing cost, implementation cost, the technology is so complicated, and sometimes implementing something that is complicated becomes so impractical that a lot of people who need to support it get confused, and so it sideways and not effectively support it, or sometimes even design and implement it. Excuse me. If you are on LinkedIn, because I'm monitoring the comment section on both LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube, where this is getting streamed. Today's topic, and I want to put it out there, this one's a long one. This was something that was brought up to me during a conversation I had with a client, and we were having some conversations around their existing setup. They have an availability group, a SQL Server always on availability group, SQL Server 2017 that is, and they wanted to combine it with certain technologies within SQL Server, like for instance, transactional replication or TDE or stuff like that. And you've probably seen it. Hi everyone. You've probably seen it when you've read through the description of the topics. Is that most of the time we ask technical questions about whether or not something is supported. Is combining Windows Server failover clustering as a guest VM on VMware with certain configurations, is that officially supported based on what Microsoft says and what VMware says if you're running on a VMware platform? Stretching clusters across different Active Directory domain. I was just released an article on mssqltips.com on specifically that. Is it supported? And it's interesting because when you start to look at the questions, they're all about trying to see whether a specific configuration is supported. And what's also funny is people would ask whether something is supported or not, and it's already in production. I mean, what are you going to do if, let's say, your existing configuration isn't supported? It's a mission critical system, 24/7, highly available, it's up and running, and you found out it's not supported. You're at risk of putting something out in production that is not officially supported. And when I say officially supported, I mean not just a Microsoft in general, but everything that is a part of that infrastructure. Windows Server failover clustering is Microsoft. SQL Server always on available groups is Microsoft. But if you're putting it on top of VMware, then that's a VMware. Does VMware support that? If you're incorporating third-party backups, for instance, using VSS snapshots, include that. Is it supported? It goes beyond just SQL Server support. And it's interesting, like I said, it is important to ask why or whether or not your existing configuration is supported. Because the last thing you want is to be completely out of support based on configuration settings, and even the fact that you're making some changes to the existing infrastructure in itself. If it deviates from what is officially supported, and what I say officially supported is you find a KB article, you find a Microsoft documentation, or a vendor KB article, a vendor documentation that says, yeah, go ahead and do that. I remember when I was working as a data center engineer way back when, Man, it feels so long. I feel old. We had very strict rules about implementing something open source, and we're not against open source. We love open source. We test out open source, but we have a very strict requirement about implementing something that's open source. And as the data center, we were the cloud. We were hosting servers. We were hosting applications, and our director is really brilliant, by the way. He was a hardcore geek, while at the same time he was a strategist and a business guy. And he kind of put a spin on the reason why we don't deploy open source solutions. And he said, our support, or we are our client's support. If something goes wrong with a client environment, we are going to be the first line of defense. If we cannot solve the problem, we need to find the second level of support. Open source means entire community. If you're running an entire mission critical system on something as open source, or something that's open source, how sure are you that you will get some response based on a question that you posted on a forum or a news group or a mailing list? You don't know. And so while we were a big fan of open source, if we decide, oh, this is a very, very good open source solution that we can implement, we will find a vendor who has implemented that open source support and make it a packaged solution that comes with support. And it's interesting because I couldn't really understand the rationale behind why we don't deploy open source solutions back then. But the way my director, the former director, explained it to me was, well, at that point, it's no longer a technical conversation, it's a legal conversation. We need to have somebody who can say, this is our turnaround time when you open up a support ticket, then you better be able to solve that problem within that span of time. That's why we talk about service level agreements. In high availability and disaster recovery, we talk about recovery point objective and recovery time objectives. And so going back to the topics of this is, why is this supported? The wrong question asked. Because you will be redirected to looking at technical solutions or doing your due diligence, doing your own research, and looking at ways on how a specific setup or configuration is officially supported by Microsoft. But when you start to think about it, and again, I'm just referring to Microsoft here because it's always on availability groups, but anything that works alongside your existing infrastructure, if you're using a storage area network, the hardware that you use has to support it. If you're using physical machines, the hardware vendor of those physical machines need to be officially supported. And so it goes beyond Microsoft and SQL Server and Windows, but anything in that high availability ecosystem. So again, why is this supported? The wrong question to ask, because number one, you are going to be led to think about the technical ramifications of implementing that. And again, I have been guilty of this in the past. If I want to deploy a solution, or if I'm supporting something, first question I ask is, oh, is this supported? And so I would end up doing research after research, going out and looking for Microsoft documentation on whether this specific configuration is supported or not. Majority of the time, 80% of the time, it is. You'll find a documentation that explains that this specific configuration or setup is officially supported. Well and good, right? But what if I don't? What if I couldn't find the documentation? And so I would spend a lot of time, I will ask questions, and eventually it leads me further away from what the real issue is. More often than not, asking, is this supported, would lead you to a totally different path, one that is fully technical, that sometimes it's no longer beneficial to your solution or to your company. Like I mentioned in the beginning, even asking the question, is this supported, when you already have something in production, doesn't make sense. What are you going to do? You're going to turn an entire production system down just because it's not supported? Of course not. That would require downtime that would cost the business a ton. If it's a revenue generating system, it will definitely cause a lot of revenue loss. But think of it this way. Asking the question, is this supported, assumes that the vendor is your first line of support. Meaning, let's use high availability SQL Server always on availability groups as an example. If you deploy a massively complex, I'll just use the example that I mentioned earlier, availability groups stretched across 2 different Active Directory domains, yes, is officially supported. If something doesn't work, let's say you had an outage, security and certificates, they start to cause some issues. Who is going to provide support? When something goes wrong, are you going to be immediately calling Microsoft up? Do you have immediate support from Microsoft? Meaning emergency response, that when something goes wrong, would you pick up the phone and immediately call Microsoft? That's one. Number 2, does your monitoring tool directly sends notifications to Microsoft so that they can immediately respond? Remember, if you're talking about a high availability system here, a mission critical system, is this, is it okay for you to wait for like an hour before you get a response? Right? And I can guarantee you, even Microsoft IT, they don't call CSS immediately. They don't call SQL Server CSS, that is. They don't call the SQL Server product team immediately. Microsoft IT is the first level of support. So it assumes that you are forwarding the incident immediately to the vendor who claims that this specific configuration is supported. And that's why I said it's assuming that the vendor immediately will be supporting you in case something goes wrong. In fact, I would kind of reframe it and ask 4 different questions, 4 more important questions, instead of just asking, is this supported? I hope you have your pen and paper ready. The first question that you need to ask is, can I support this? That's the first question. Start with a question of, can I support this? The reason, one of the reasons why most technical professionals, sysadmins and DBAs would ask the question, is this supported, is because number 1, they lack the confidence to support the infrastructure. They lack the confidence to support the solution. Either they're not skilled enough, or they have not worked with it at all. They have no technical experience. They were not exposed, and so they ask the question: is this supported? If they see that the vendor officially supports it, they go ahead and do it. Confidence is key here, and you can ask yourself the question as well. Every time you ask the question, is this supported? Am I really asking whether the vendor officially supports it, or do I not have the confidence to support the solution? And I've seen this a lot with my clients as well. They would ask, hey, is this officially supported? And when I ask the question to them, like, can you officially support it? I kind of get a sense based on the response whether or not they have the capabilities to support the solution. An always-on available group solution is not a simple configuration. You're looking at a Windows Server failover cluster in an Active Directory domain, typically running SQL Server always-on available groups on top of it, replicating data across 2 different servers, depending on Active Directory DNS, networking, storage. It's not straightforward. And if you've never done anything like that before, if you've never implemented something, you've never designed something like that, the first question that you could think of is, okay, this is what my boss wants me to deploy. Is it going to be supported? And so you start looking at documentation, blog posts, articles that tell you, oh, it is possible. Now you can start doing it. But then you still have not done it before, and so you kind of feel a little bit intimidated about the setup. I remember one client of mine from way back, they wanted to deploy they already have, in production, they already have a 2-node Windows Server failover cluster running SQL Server always on available groups. I think it was SQL Server 2014 back then. And it's on 2 different data centers, and they constantly encounter outages. And the first question they asked me, they brought me on board and they started asking me questions about, is this supported? And I know for a fact that it is supported. Deploying 2-node failover cluster across data centers, it is officially supported with a file share witness. It is supported. But the real question that needs to be asked at that point was, one, who designed this? And of course, the question was not meant to accuse somebody, but knowing whether the person who will support it eventually can in fact support it is a big factor when deploying a complex solution like an always-on availability groups. And it turned out that some third-party managed services provider deployed the solution, handed it over to them, and I asked the question, so can you support it? And I just found out it was the first time that they had an always-on available group infrastructure. Nobody on their team knew how it worked. And it's one of the reasons why whenever an outage happens, they kind of freaked out, waited until the outage disappears for whatever reason, maybe some network issues. I didn't get some time to really dig into the infrastructure. I just asked a couple of questions. And confidence is really a byproduct of you being able to not just support it, but understand what is going on under the covers, learn what it is that makes up the infrastructure, how it works in order for you to properly support it. And eventually, if something goes wrong, you will be able to troubleshoot issues. And this is huge. Confidence plays a big role. And there is no substitute to hands-on experience working with the technology, doing the work, applying it, troubleshooting it, and all of these things, right? So the first question that you really need to ask is not that is it supported, but rather, can you support it? Or can I support this? It's a question of confidence, having the confidence to officially support it. You having the skills, having the knowledge, having the experience supporting it. Because like I said, at the end of the day, when something goes wrong with your always-on available groups infrastructure, you're not going to be calling Microsoft immediately, or your monitoring tool, hopefully you do have a monitoring tool, is not going to send an email alert to Microsoft for them to respond and look at your infrastructure, see what's going on. You will always be the first line of support. An incident happens, tickets are created, you are going to be the one responding to it. So the first question that you really need to ask is, can you support it? Okay? You have to be confident, having the skills, and you have to be certain about whether you can deal with it or not. But it goes beyond you having the confidence, you having the skill, the experience, having the technical capabilities to support it. Okay. The second thing that you need to ask is, can we support it? Right? Can we support it? Not just you, but we. It's interesting how we treat a highly available system 24/7 which means it has to be online, it has to be highly available, it has to provide what it's there for, like serving transactions, interacting with client applications. It's interesting how we expect it to be 24/7 and also expect the person who knows about it to also be available 24/7. Confidence is not enough. You need to be capable. It doesn't matter if you're the best person in the world to support this. It doesn't matter if you have the expertise, if you have the skill, if you have the right experience, if you've done this a million times in the past. It doesn't matter if you have the confidence to handle this. If you're on the other side of the world, do not have an internet connection, do not have a phone access, do not have anything. You've left your laptop because you are away. And I've learned this the hard way when I was still working as a data center engineer from again, I'm dating myself here. 15 years ago, I was attending the Microsoft MVP Summit in Seattle and Redmond, and I was the one responsible for managing a bunch of servers in our production data center. And it's interesting because business operations in Southeast Asia is a totally different time zone than in the West Coast. And so even if I was the person responsible, I had the experience, I had the capabilities, I have the technical know-how, I can deal with it with my eyes closed. Unfortunately, I'm on the other side of the world and my eyes were closed because I was sleeping. And so in addition to asking, can I support this? You gotta ask the question, can we support this? In a complex system like an always-on availability groups, it's not enough to have one person taking care of this. And I've been emphasizing this for so long, that in order for you to properly support a high availability solution, you need to have at least two people, because you're gonna have to take a look at holidays, you're gonna have to take a look at vacation days, you're gonna have to take a look at sick days. Again, it doesn't matter if I can do the work with my eyes closed, if I can't even do the work because my eyes were closed because I was sleeping on the other side of the globe. Okay? The next question that you need to ask, in addition to can I support this, is can we support this? Meaning, do I have another person on the team who can back me up if I'm away on a family vacation, if I'm on a holiday, if there's a statutory or public holiday, or the weekends? I mean, come on. You're not going to want to be taking care of this 24/7. I remember somebody I talked to last week on a strategy session tell me, yeah, I built this entire infrastructure, I have the available group set up, it's up and running, and it's my baby. And like the question I asked was, well, who else can support this? And he froze because he remembered a time when he couldn't even be present for his daughter's ball game. He was at the park. Her daughter was playing a ball game. I don't know if it was baseball or something. And he was on his phone. He had remote tools on his phone, a fancy phone. And he was addressing issues on the availability groups from his phone. And the game was done. He was not even paying attention that his daughter's team won the game. And that's the thing. When you are supporting a highly available solution, you gotta be able to have people, a team, at least two of you, to support this. It's not enough for you to be the only person on the team. Again, you're gonna get sick. You're gonna wanna have vacation days. And here's the reality. Even if you're the best person in the world to support this infrastructure, if you built it, you have the technical capabilities, if you're sick, if you're tired, If you're exhausted, you won't be able to do the work. And this is part of the is this supported question. You got to ask yourself the first question, can you support it, or can I support this? You got to have the confidence to be able to support this. The second question that you need to ask is, can we support this? It leads to the question of capability. Sure, you're confident, but am I capable? Am I on site, or am I near a computer with a VPN connection? Do I have internet connection? Am I on vacation? Do I have cell phone? All of these things should factor into you supporting and maintaining a high availability solution, right? And the more complex something is, the more stringent the recovery point and recovery time and SLAs are, the more people you need to bring into the picture. Again, there are so many cases where people would say, yeah, I'm the only person I can manage until they break down. And what I mean by breakdown is they got sick, they got burnt out to a point where they quit their jobs, and it's not sustainable. You gotta think about that. And when somebody says, yeah, I'm the only person taking care of this, I now bring the third question. Can I support this? Can we support this? And if there's no we, meaning there's no team other than you who needs to support this, I bring the third question. Can we get management support? Can we get management support? It's interesting because when companies would deploy availability group solutions or any type of high availability solution, they would assume that, yeah, we have a rock star on a team, he can take care of this, yeah, we'll let him take care of everything, yet not give them the tools, the resources that they need. Sure, it is important for you to have the resourcefulness, it is important for you to have the skill, but this is not a one-man sport. High availability is not a one-man sport. Don't try to win the game on your own. So you gotta have management support. So the three questions that I've already mentioned, can I support this? The next question is, can we support this? Meaning there should be more than two people, at least two people. The more systems, the more people. Even if you have a streamlined operational process, it has got to have more than two people. Because one would go on vacation, one would probably get sick. And the third one is, can we get management support? It's not enough for management to just, hey, here's the hardware, here's the license, go figure it out. They need to understand how critical this is. They need to understand how important this infrastructure is. Now, it's easy to convince management if this always-on available groups infrastructure is a revenue-generating system. Yeah, they can do the math. If the system is making X amount of dollars per hour and you lose the database for like an hour or two, they know the math. But they also know what kind of support this thing needs. And it's interesting because they expect the people who are supporting this to have the capabilities without sending them for some form of training to get them up to speed with how to deal with this. It's one of the reasons I get people asking me about my training classes. And it's interesting because imagine being in an operating room, going on a surgery, and have the doctor performing surgery be an intern. It's his first day of internship. He's not done this before. He just graduated and now he's doing it. It is scary. But the thing is, if you don't have management support, this is exactly what you're up against. And next thing you know, you're going to be the one to blame. Why? Well, you didn't push hard on the side effects and the consequences of not having a full team. One of my clients from about 2 years ago, they're a healthcare provider down south of the United States. Yes, is They knew that if they're deploying a high availability solution, if they need to add a replica to an AG or a node to a failover cluster or several databases, they would have to calculate the man hours needed to take care of these. And once it reaches a threshold, it's time for them to hire somebody new. And not just hire somebody new to support this, but also to train these people. Because you don't want to, again, put an intern and do surgery for something as mission critical as an operation. Similarly, you don't want somebody who does not know how databases work, who does not know how failover clustering works, who does not know how availability groups work, more so how to troubleshoot an issue if something happens, and just let them go wild. So those three questions are really important. Can I support this? Do you have the skills? Do you have the capabilities? Do you have the training? Do you have the confidence, the experience, the hands-on experience to support this infrastructure? Second, can we support this? Are you the only person on a team who knows about this? Do you have a colleague, maybe on the same team as you, maybe on a different team, your backup, that knows exactly how the system works, how to troubleshoot an issue, how the infrastructure is put together? And in addition to the question, can we support it? Third question that you need to ask is, can we get management to support this? Because management should understand that this is more than just let's build a server, let's put in something, install Windows, install SQL Server, and by the way, let's pay Microsoft some hundreds and thousands of dollars for licensing fees, deploy this mission critical database, and that's it. No. They have to understand the resources needed in order to make this work. They need to be on board with monitoring solutions that need to be there. You know, it's funny that I've seen so many infrastructures, mission critical, high availability infrastructures, but no monitoring solutions in place. Management has to understand that they need to have qualified people, skilled people who are capable of not just supporting this, but also supporting it effectively. I mean, again, it doesn't matter if you have 5 or 10 people who are supposed to support this, but none of them know how it works. It doesn't matter if you have 5 or 10 people who have been trained, who have been exposed to this, who have had the hands-on experience, yet they don't have the coordination, right? There's no proper escalation procedure. There's no communications within the team. So management has to support this. And it is your responsibility to speak to whoever is on the management team. That be, if you're a DBA, that could be your database DBA manager. It could be your IT manager. It could be your CIO or your CTO. Let them know. Get their support. Because if you don't get their support, you're on your own. And at the end of the day, it's going to be your fault when things go south. It's interesting because we laugh and we make fun of the DBA acronym as a default blame acceptor, because it's always the database's fault. Now it becomes the DBA's fault most of the time, until the DBA pushes back and say, no, it's a network problem. But seriously though, it is going to fall into your responsibilities if all of these things don't work. That's why you need to ask those 3 questions. Can I support it? Can we support it? And can we get management support for this? I had to add the last question, which is very, 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 very important. And this question is, I want to say that this is kind of like top of all the 3 questions that you've already asked. Because for me, this should be the one driving the decision whether to implement something or not. And that question is this the right solution for your company? Is this the right solution that you need? Because more often than not, I see implementations of infrastructures or solutions in the case of unavailability groups where somebody decided to design an infrastructure because they feel like it, they saw it on a presentation from a Microsoft conference. Oh, they were watching a webinar and this looks really good. And so the lead engineer designed it. Maybe he wants to put it as part of his quote unquote resume, because it's nice to always add stuff on our resume so we can brag about it during the next interview. And then he leaves, somebody has to take care of it. I've seen so many cases like that where a complex solution was built, but when you start to really think about and you ask more meaningful questions, it is not necessarily something that is needed at that point. It's just like buying a Ferrari. If all you need for that is to go to the supermarket, well, you can always Uber to the supermarket, or you can walk. You can ride your bike. But the thing is, the more important question is this solution the right one? Will it meet your business needs? Will it meet the company's needs as far as deploying it is concerned? And the challenge that most technical professionals have is the fact that we don't ask those questions. It's more often than not, this is the technology, this is the infrastructure, this is the setup, I want to go for it. Whether it's something that the business needs or not, I'm just going to deploy it because it's something that I've read from the Microsoft documentation. It's something that I've learned, and now I need something to apply it to. Oh, I need an item on my resume. I want to put it in there. The more important question is it something that you need right now? Not in the future, right now. Or, of course, part of that is also future pacing and planning for capacity. If your business decides, yeah, we are going to acquire more businesses in the long run, then you can plan for like 2 or 3 years. But the thing is, a solution is whether a solution is supported or not is irrelevant if it doesn't solve a business need. Let me repeat that, and it is worth repeating. It is irrelevant whether a solution is officially supported by a vendor or not if it does not meet a business need or if it does not solve a business problem. All we're doing at that point is just testing technology for the sake of technology, right? Implementing distributed availability groups with Active Directory and certificates and encryption, and we're just doing that for the sake of doing it. The goal of every high availability solution is to solve a business problem. Not so we could, put it in our resume. If you want to do that, go do it on your own lab. But it is important that whatever solution that you're going to be putting out there, whether it's a 2-node Windows Server failover cluster with a 2-replica AG, or as complex as a 4-replica AG stretched into a distributed AG across 2 different data centers in 2 different Active Directory domains, it doesn't matter. You have to ask the question, is this the right solution for us, for our companies? And that requires you to step outside of your role as a technical expert and really start asking questions about what really matters to the business. And it elevates you beyond your role as a technician, an operational support guy, a database administrator, a sysadmin, an IT engineer. It elevates you. It separates you from that, because at that point, it's no longer about technology. It's about how you can add more value to the business. So just a recap of all the questions, that you have to ask, instead of just simply asking, of course, I'm not one to argue against official support. That's a given. Don't deploy something that's completely not supported, right? Do your due diligence, do your own research, look for official documentation from vendors, not just Microsoft, but anything in the stack, hardware, operating system, middleware, third-party apps, anything that you put into the ecosystem, it has to be officially supported, and the combination of which has to be officially supported. But you also need to ask the question, can you support it? Do you have the skills? Do you have the capabilities? Do you have the confidence to support it? The second question is, can we support it? Are you the only person on the team who knows about this? If not, it is time for you to bring somebody in. Get them trained, get them acquainted, let them be a part of the on-call rotation. And third, you gotta have management support. Can we get management support on this? But the most important question is this the right solution for you or for the business, right? Because nothing would matter. Even if you build a complex solution, if it doesn't solve a business problem, it's useless, right? And these are the things that I cover with my clients even. There are cases when I would even tell them, don't deploy an availability group if you don't have a team. Now, if they already have an availability group, well, they have to ramp up, get their team ramped up, get them trained, get them ready to support this, right? And if, again, in more cases than not, it's really all about those three questions. It's either the person who is supposed to be supporting it does not have the capabilities nor the skills to support it, meaning he cannot technically support it, or it's only one person on the team who's now responsible for supporting it 24/7. Or, sure, they have people who can do this, but management support is not there, and so they're now forced to do the MacGyver thing and do whatever they need to do, but then without official management support. And last but not least, the most important question that you need to ask is this the right solution for the business? That's all I have for this week's episode of the Practical SQL Server HADR show. Tune in again next week for another topic. And before I go, if you need any help, if let's say for instance you already have an existing always on available group solution, and number one, you cannot officially support it, meaning you don't have the skill, reach out, use that link on the screen, schedule a strategy session, let's talk. Let's have a conversation. We'll put our heads together and figure out, number one, what is it that you really need? Do you really need the skill? Because sometimes you may have an existing always on available group solution, but somebody else already is aware. Maybe you need to pass on the responsibility to somebody else. Two, we'll look at whether it's just you or somebody else on the team. And if it's just you, you gotta get another person on the team. And number three, you gotta need to have your management support on this. We'll get on a call, put our heads together, let's see what's working, what's not working. And as we get clear on what you really need, we'll come up with a step-by-step strategy on how to address the issues that you're currently facing. Whether it's about your availability groups, whether it's about your operational processes, having a team, having a management support, we'll put our heads together and figure it out. And if I can help you achieve those goals, I will. If not, I will steer you in a direction that will help you the best. Use that link on the screen, schedule a strategy session, and let's have that conversation. I look forward to helping you achieve your goals. All right? That's about it for this Friday's episode of the Practical SQL Server HADR show. Tune in again next week for another topic. And it's interesting because my clients are actually getting me to really think about these topics. Sometimes it would just come out based on the conversations. Sometimes it's a question that they have. And then I start to think about, yeah, there's some patterns here. And so I have to give credit to where credit is due. These are all really amazing questions from the clients that I work with. And so, yeah, it's got to thank them for that. Again, join me again next week. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Happy Friday, and I'll see you next week. Bye.